Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Absolute Wonder Woman issue 3 by Kelly Thompson, Hayden Sherman and Jordie Bellaire. Diana of Hell's battle against the Tetracide continues this issue as Thompson introduces us to this universe's Barbara Minerva, better known as the villain Cheetah. Much like her main universe counterpart, Barbara here is involved with the natural history of the world, working at Gateway City's museum, and upon seeing Wonder Woman in action, rushes out to meet the hero. Diana meanwhile continues to work with the military to find a way to deal with the Tetracide, revealing the monster is resistant to most magic, or at least her level of magic. I like that Thompson injects some humility into Diana as she knows she can't possibly stand against this creature, but she's going to try to regardless, and the military need to know the best way to beat the creature should she die. Diana reveals that the Tetracide lives up to its name and kills in 4 different ways: the death of fear, the death of mind, the death of body, and the death of soul. Thompson and the series artist Hayden Sherman explore these 4 aspects in a very cool way, using the Greek tradition of telling stories etched into the sides of ceramic pottery to show how the Tetracide kills. Now I really like the explanations here, as each is related to the other and one can't happen without the other one. So first, it rids the being of its fear of it, so people don't fear it after it emits some sort of sound and are instead drawn towards it, to the point where there are like mass hordes of people trampling over each other to get to this creature and to get inside this creature's mouth, which is where the mind, body and soul are all killed as the people are slowly digested. It's an extremely effective way to convey the terrifying nature of this creature, and it really is horrifying. It's like something you'd see out of Lovecraft, you know. It just eats away at this person's body and then their soul and their mind, just like they go insane because of the pain and what they are experiencing. It's just great stuff you very rarely see in comics these days. Diana implores everyone run while they still can as she confronts the monster, tying the nemesis lasso to the end of her sword and plunging it deep into the creature's hide, wrapping the lasso around its body to prevent its tentacles from touching anything and anyone. Despite the creature ripping the sword out, Diana is given enough time to use her little bag, which she utters a spell into to conjure a giant battle axe out of. Again, I love the use of magic with this Wonder Woman. It's a very interesting new dynamic for her, and so far the uses have been very fun and straight up just D&D. You know, she has a bag of holding which carries multiple large weapons and probably many other cool things as well. And fittingly, it's very superhero-ish, as it's literally her utility belt, something which Wonder Woman has never had, which is really quite cool and a nice little addition to her. Wonder Woman is able to use the magical axe to cleave off some of the tentacles, but unfortunately one grabs her arm. But before we find out what happens, we head back to the past where Diana and Steve battle the Hydra, who has come to claim Steve for itself and drag him back into the depths of hell. Like we've seen before, Diana gives the monster a chance to back down, but it doesn't, and Diana is forced to kill it. Thompson actually addresses this with the characters, as Diana is upset that she was forced to do this, and Steve can see that she is upset, and she hates that she has to resort to violence all the time. Steve does find it amazing though that despite being surrounded by pain and death and violence and traps, Diana and Cersei have managed to carve out their own little bit of paradise there in hell. It's a great way to bring up the core of Wonder Woman, which is just love and acceptance, as Diana knows that just a little bit of love is transformative, and even a little bit can change things for the better. I like that Steve thinks that even his world could do with a little bit more love, and it's again kind of like just a little thing that kind of adds to Diana's character and motivation to move into man's world and be that savior that her mother thinks she will be. Steve also talks a little bit more about his world, revealing that he's from Gateway City, and I like that he compares the sunsets on the water of the city to his mother's laugh, and it's a really interesting thing because you wouldn't put those two things together, and I like that Steve realizes that that sounds ridiculous, but he knows that there was something consistent and surprising in the nature of the sun on the water that just reminded him of his mother's laugh, and it's really just like a nice little bit for Steve to have. And he's a character who writers seldom give anything to, you know. Usually he's like some sort of plot device that moves Diana's story forward, but I like here Thompson is giving him something to do and giving him a piece of Wonder Woman's story that helps push her forward, but it also pushes his story forward as well, and he's a constant in her life from the time they meet to when she gets into man's world. Seeing Steve Steve is kind of sad that he's trapped in hell, Diana is given a bit of inspiration because of this, and later, after sending Steve to grab some firewood, she quietly tells Cersei that she might have found a way to send Steve home. Cersei knows the spell Diana wishes to use but implores her not to since a sacrifice is needed, and despite that though, Diana understands the stakes and still wants to go ahead with it. So later, while Steve sleeps, Cersei finds Diana by the furnace, and Diana explains that she knows what she is to be for the world, and she is to be a savior of humanity like Cersei knows she will be. However, she cannot fail her first mission for humanity, and she now fully believes that Steve wasn't sent here, just by happenstance. He was sent there to test her, and this is like her first test to see if she is worthy of saving humanity, and if she can save Steve, then she can save the world. As here Diana reveals that she actually cut off her own dominant arm, claiming that this will be a worthy sacrifice for the spell she wants to do, since it required the arm of a warrior. This is something I did not expect happening, and last review I theorized that maybe Cersei would be sacrificing herself to send Steve back after seeing what good he is doing and how Diana has kind of attached herself to him and, their connection and everything. She has seen something special for her daughter and wants to give her that, and that would be her last gift to her daughter. But this is such a wild left swing, and I can't wait to see what Thompson does with it. Diana does not have an arm now. That's no big thing. I think maybe this is set up still to Cersei sacrificing herself. Maybe this in turn girds her to sacrifice herself for Diana, to send Diana up to Earth, because we still don't know how Diana made it to Earth, and it was made pretty clear that she could not leave that little island, and Cersei could not leave that little island. So there is something going on there, and maybe that's going to be the thing, like maybe seeing what Diana was capable of doing and what she would do to save this one man, and this has convinced her that she's going to be the one to save the world and she needs to be there to do it. Thanks to her cutting her arm off, Cersei is forced to help Diana with the ritual, and as a green flame burns on the shores of their island, Steve suddenly disappears from their hut and returns to the land of the living. I really like Cersei's narration of this sequence, as while she knew Diana would be a savior, she believes she kind of underestimated just how much she would change the world and the extent she would go to help someone. Just one person, and even sacrifice parts of herself for this one person, proves to Cersei that she is more powerful than she could ever imagine. Again, this goes into my theory that maybe Cersei is going to sacrifice herself for Diana to send her to Earth so she can continue her mission. She's seen the extent at which the hero will go to save someone. Back in the present, Diana is still captured by the Tetracide, but thanks to it grabbing the arm she cut off long ago, she reveals that it was just a magical illusion that her and Cersei made for her. This gives her a chance to escape back to the military, demanding that they leave now. We get a real cool change here that, thanks to having no arm, Diana has to use her magical bag to conjure up a robotic one, attaching it to her shoulder. I do like that the arm looks to be cobbled together from just various bits of metal that she's obviously found in hell. This was definitely something made by her and Cersei before the magical illusion, or maybe just as like a backup, and she's got it in that bag of holding just in case. So I like that it's just a very like cobbled together arm. It doesn't look very strong. It just looks like it's there just to like give her some sort of extra mobility. It's probably going to get replaced at some point with something. I'm intrigued to see what Thompson has in store for us in that regard, since sky's the limit now. Is she magical? Is it going to be a magical arm? Is it just going to be her arm again? Is she going to like somehow earn it back? Who knows, but I'm excited to find out. Seeing her without her arm makes Steve realize that this is what she used to get him out of hell, and it cost her dominant arm. After Diana tells Steve to leave before his resurrection is wasted on an untimely death by the Tetracide, Diana runs, quite literally, into the arriving Barbara, who's the first person to call her Wonder Woman, citing that this is what the Amazons would call their absolute best champion. Diana doesn't have much time to talk with Barbara though, promising to come and find her later before leaving to fight the Tetracide again. Barbara does mention that she is in the book, quote unquote, and I don't know if that's her saying, maybe this is just like an old-timey thing that I know a lot of people listening probably don't know about, but when you would say something like that, that would mean that she can be looked up in the phone book which had her phone number and address or something in it. And I don't know whether that's her saying that, like maybe this universe is just a little bit behind, where you would think a modern day universe would be, and phone books are still very much a thing. Or it might be that book that Diana was reading earlier in the issue, and maybe Barbara has some ties, much like how Cheetah has some ties to the Amazonians, and maybe this is them sort of like pairing that up and setting that up for her to become the Cheetah. Either way, it's a very interesting sort of thing to end the character on, very intriguing, and makes your mind think of like what does she mean by in the book. I'm very intrigued to see her role in this universe as well, because this Barbara seems to be a lot younger than the Barbara usually is. This Barbara seems to be like a teenager, or at least early 20s, which is far and few different than what we usually get. So very intrigued to see her, and like what other Wonder Woman villains are around, and all Wonder Woman adjacent characters are around in this universe. Diana meets the creature on the beach again and realizes there is no way of stopping it besides fighting it, but then she remembers an item from her bag, a small glass orb filled with water that she knows needs to be widened somehow in order to be effective. To do this, Diana seeks out the nearby news reporter and cameraman who have been covering this story since it began, wanting them to follow her so she can give the world a message. I love the reason that she gives them for not allowing them to record her setting up the ritual on a rooftop, citing how people don't like new things and often those things can be scary, and a scared populace is not a good thing to have. And of course, not everyone has the responsibility right now to wield magic, so she can't just have people repeating what she draws on the rooftop willy-nilly without realizing the ramifications of it. It's very smart and thought out reasoning for that, and I like that the guys actually say that as well. They're like, oh yeah, that's, fair enough, that makes sense. After setting up the ritual, Diana allows them to broadcast her live to the world, whom she tells she needs their help to save Gateway City. She tells them all about the Tetracide and how the sound it will soon admit will compel them to sacrifice themselves to it. So to save them, she plans on briefly deafening the entire city. Diana assures them that it will save them, but understands that will of course be chaos and panic, but wants the people to know that Wonder Woman believes in them and they will be able to save their city. Diana smashes the orb and engulfs the city in a thick green cloud, hoping that it will save them from the wrath of the Tetracide. Again, this is such a fun use of the magical side of this Wonder Woman in a real creative way. Making the entire city deaf to prevent a monster from eating them is so interesting and different, and I think it's a lot more effective than just Diana talking to a camera and, making a statement where she says that she believes everyone, and then everyone suddenly has that change of heart and just kind of rallies against him. Something we've seen in comics before and something that can work, but I don't think it would have worked here. I feel like that would be like a main universe Diana thing, like she would probably do that, and here it feels a little bit more realistic to kind of have that message where she tells them that she's going to believe in them, but also that she's going to actually deafen everyone, and there's like practical side to it. I like that it has that, but it still has that core idea of her believing in the goodness of humanity and the people, and I do have a feeling that it might not work, being that this is the absolute universe. This is like, DC's Ultimate Universe, where bad things can and often will happen. So I can see there being some sort of chaos ensuing from all of this, and I'm intrigued to see what that is. Absolute Wonder Woman continues to surprise me in ways I never knew existed. The magical side of this Diana is such a brilliant addition to her character, and while she has dabbled with magic in the past and main universe, I love that it is such like a core concept for this character now, and it really sorts out a lot of problems I have, and I think a lot of writers have, with Diana, where they don't really know what to do with her or find out which sort of hole she fills in this universe and like where she fits into this universe. But here Kelly and her artist Hayden have just made it look so easy. They've taken her and added in all of these really cool and interesting aspects, like the magic side to her and her Cersei being her mother and growing up in hell, and it just works. It just absolutely works, and doing all this while also incorporating classical Wonder Woman concepts like, being made from clay and all that sort of stuff in really fun ways. I can't wait to see what other cool and interesting takes Thompson and her team have on Wonder Woman and her world. I'm going to give this issue a 10 out of 10.